Much has been said over the last 3 months about Mexico and Canada, but we have very large deficits with both of them. But even more importantly, they've allowed fentanyl to come into our country at levels never seen before, killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens and many very young, beautiful people, destroying families. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
I want to do a thought experiment. And this might sound a bit wild, but let's just do what if. What if we completely legalized fentanyl and sold it in every corner 7-Eleven? And then whoever wanted to could just go in and buy fentanyl. Just whenever they wanted, for whatever reason they wanted. Are you horrified by that thought? Let's pause and consider. Now, ordinarily what I would do in these videos is I'd give you the result of all of my research from all of the stuff that I've done. I'd find the links that kind of boil everything down and give it to you and then explain it all to you. I can't do that in this one for reasons that I'll go into. And I mean, I can't even really ask you to trust the numbers I'm going to give you because I'm not even sure I trust the numbers. It's just really difficult to get good numbers on this. So I'm sorry, but this is going to have to be a lot more of a link dump than I normally do. And I'm going to try to keep the number of links to a minimum, but it's just so hard to get good numbers on this. And it's like, yeah, everything I'm going to tell you, it's in the link somewhere. I hope I didn't take out the wrong one because I am going to try to pare it down. But what I am looking for is how many deaths happen because of the legally produced fentanyl by pharmaceutical companies versus the fentanyl produced on the black market, which we've talked about that before. That's illicitly manufactured fentanyl, or IMF. And so we have these, 70 to 75,000 deaths a year from fentanyl. We know that's primarily from the black market form, the IMF. What I want to know is how much of that is from the prescription form that have been taken by patients who have been prescribed by their doctors. How dangerous is it in that scenario? The problem is the CDC doesn't want to study that, and we've gone into the reasons why, how corrupt the CDC is, especially on this issue, and how they're just determined to lump all fentanyl deaths together and use it to blame doctors and pain patients and pharmaceutical companies because you can sue them and then you can turn around and use it to push Suboxone, which, all these other doctors are behind, and, they don't like these other opioids because they're generics. They don't have the patent on them. But that's the problem. These ICD-10 codes that the CDC uses, that doesn't distinguish between illicit and prescription forms of fentanyl. I mean, if you go back over this playlist, then you'll be able to easily see that, yeah, mostly this is from the IMF, the black market fentanyl. But what I wanted to know is how dangerous is the prescription form. And that's what I've had such a hard time pinning down. Everything I've researched, and since they're not keeping track of it, you can really just estimate it like you can do a Fermi estimate, which will get you within an order of magnitude of the right answer usually. And so in this case, it seems that the deaths from prescription fentanyl, from people being prescribed fentanyl and taking it, those deaths are somewhere between 30 and 300 every year. Now that's out of 2.7 million fentanyl prescriptions. That's an incredible safety record. 30 to 300, that's a blip. That's statistical noise is what that is. And even if we were to say that even that was wrong by an order of magnitude, and we were to push it up to 3,000 deaths a year, that would still be 0.1%. So, I mean, if all these people going to the black market for fentanyl, or maybe they're going for heroin and getting fentanyl or whatever, they're getting it from people who have no dosage control, who have no reason to worry about whether you're going to be a repeat customer or whether they're going to have a wrongful death lawsuit against them or whatever. 7-Eleven has to worry about that because 7-Eleven is a legal company operating in a legal space. So let's say that happens, and let's say that even if you had completely legal fentanyl sold in 7-Eleven, that it would still be that 70,000 deaths. It wouldn't be. It would be much, much lower, in the dozens to hundreds. But let's just keep using that 70,000 figure. Would it be terrible if 7-Eleven sold a drug that killed 70,000 people a year? Well, what if I told you that 7-Eleven already sells much more dangerous drugs? Because they sell a really dangerous drug called alcohol. And alcohol kills 170,000 people a year. That's over twice as much as fentanyl. 170,000 deaths a year from alcohol. And you can buy it at the corner drugstore. You can buy it at the grocery store. You can buy it lots of places. What if I told you they sell a drug that's even worse? Because they sell tobacco products. They sell cigarettes. That kills 480,000 people a year. In America. All these figures are in America. So even if we wouldn't have any lower death rate from fentanyl by selling it in 7-Elevens, it would still be the case that 7-Eleven sells a drug that kills almost 7 times as many people. 7 times as many people die from tobacco as die from fentanyl. So why wasn't Trump going off on that? Why wasn't Trump saying, oh, it's so horrible that 7-Eleven is selling all of these ridiculously dangerous drugs, and all these other drugstores and grocery stores that are selling products that kill far more people than opioids? Why not one word about that? And he keeps talking about fentanyl coming across the Mexican border. Doesn't talk about tequila, does he? That's interesting. It's very interesting how selective this is. Probably because we already learned our lesson with alcohol, didn't we? Because if you look at how dangerous alcohol is, you can kind of see why people wanted it to become illegal. And then they did it, and it didn't work out so well, did it? Because first of all, you weren't doing anything about the problem of alcoholism. That wasn't solved in any way. And you just added so many more problems on top of it. Problems of crime, problems of more dangerous and more potent and more poisonous forms of alcohol. Exactly what we're seeing with the war on drugs. And with Prohibition, it got to the point where even the teetotalers turned against it. They're like, yeah, we tried. Good idea. It didn't work. We need to go back on that. We need to think of something else. For whatever reason, we haven't learned our lesson when it comes to drugs. In fact, we seem to be going the other way. Doctors are more wary about prescribing hydrocodone. We're even getting reports that hospitals are not giving people opioids post-op and just letting them suffer, torturing them, because they don't want them to have the evil opioids. So one of the links below is going to be a link to Yale Medicine. Whole big study, but I just wanted to read this one part out to you because I think it's important. And they wrote, people use fentanyl patches for cancer or other types of pain. And we don't ever want to stigmatize that or say that's a bad idea. Others might get it in the emergency department, say if they have a fracture. Under medical guidance, fentanyl is appropriate and people should not be afraid of it. I want to read that out again. Under medical guidance, fentanyl is appropriate and people should not be afraid of it. And yet pharmaceutical companies are getting sued over it. The DEA is shutting down doctors. Pain patients are left to suffer. Why? For what? For something that isn't even their fault. So another one I have is estimating the actual death rate caused by prescription opioid medication and illicit fentanyl. And this is back in 2018 from the Journal of American Physicians and Surgeons. And again, they found it was just so difficult to get good data on this, but they did conclude not all opioids are identical in abuse potential and likely lethality, yet government statistics group causes of death in a way that obscures the importance of identifying specific agents involved in deadly overdoses. Searching the CDC Wonder database reveals that the recent spike in deaths is primarily due to illicit fentanyl. Targeting legal prescriptions is thus unlikely to reduce overdose deaths, but it may increase them by driving more users to illegal sources, just like we've said in several other videos in this playlist over the years. And this was 7 years ago! 7 years before Trump made the statement we just saw. Trump's policies are not going to fix anything, because the problem cannot be fixed by making it more illegal, because the problem is it's illegal in the first place. Just like with Prohibition before, all of these problems are because of the war on drugs, not the drugs themselves. You can try to crack down on the legal sources all you want. You're just going to drive people over to the illegal sources like we've seen before, and also like I have below. And this is Population-Based Opioid Prescribing and Overdose Deaths in the USA, an Observational Study from 2022, 3 years ago, in the Journal of General Internal Medicine. And they found regional decreases in opioid prescriptions were associated with declines in overdose deaths involving prescription opioids, but were also associated with increases in deaths involving synthetic opioids, primarily fentanyl. Cracking down on prescriptions did nothing to solve the problem. It just meant that instead of getting the prescription opioids, they went over to the black market to get fentanyl, which is much more dangerous. And I've shown you the graph plenty of times before in this playlist, so I'm not going to show it to you again. But as they crack down on the prescriptions and that goes down, deaths from black market fentanyl go way up by a much larger degree. I mean, what do we really think we're doing here? What problem do we think we're solving? What good does anyone think this is going to do? I think people need to keep in mind that it's only been in the last century or so that opioids have become a problem, because they got associated with the Chinese in, I guess that would be like the late 19th century, and so they cracked down on opium. And that was kind of the start of it. And then, of course, the war on drugs, making heroin illegal. But more significantly, just in the last 20 or 30 years or so, when they decided they needed to stop people from getting the only painkiller we have. Because I'm sorry, none of the others are painkillers. Tylenol is not a painkiller, it's a COX inhibitor. Ibuprofen, aspirin, they're not painkillers, they're anti-inflammatories. Marijuana is not a painkiller. A lot of people say, oh, marijuana can replace opioids. No, it can't. Might be a good adjunct. I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I do know that it has anti-inflammatory properties. It has sedative properties. I think it might even have muscle relaxant properties. So it can help. But it's not an actual painkiller. The only real painkillers we have are full agonist opioids. And if you don't base your pain management regimen on that, the rest isn't going to do all that much. The rest can help once you have a good base of opioids to build on top of. But they're not going to work without it. You have to understand, humans have been using opioids safely and effectively for thousands of years. They might not have understood what it was. They might not have understood the mechanism of action. But humans have known about the analgesic properties of opioids for thousands of years. Thousands and thousands of years. And yeah, maybe there's been problems here and there. But it hasn't, destroyed human societies. We haven't had anywhere near the problems that we've had right now with the war on drugs, with making fentanyl illegal. It's only with the black market opioids, only with the war on drugs, that they've suddenly gotten dangerous. So consider all that. And now tell me how you feel about legal fentanyl, safe fentanyl, being sold in 7-Elevens, that's produced by a company that's going to do proper dosage control, that isn't going to try to jack it up with any other crap, that isn't going to try to cut it with anything dangerous, where you know what you're getting, and where you and your family can have proper venues if someone is doing something wrong, if someone is pushing it on you or whatever, when they're not supposed to. Or when a pharmaceutical company does make it in a way that's dangerous. You can file lawsuits against them. They're doing it right now, even though it's completely bogus. They can do it when it's bogus. They can do it if there's an actual problem. Selling fentanyl in 7-Elevens? Why not? Comment and let me know what you think. Yes, comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Like, subscribe, and the bell. All the algorithm stuff. Sharing does so much, especially since we need more attention to this issue. Because if people only know what they're spoon-fed by Trump and the media, and by all these mouthpieces that are just regurgitating the propaganda from Prop, then this is not going to get better. It's getting worse. It's going to be where it's going to affect you. You go to the emergency room with a broken arm, or you need surgery for something, and they say, sorry, we're not going to give you full agonist opioids. We're going to give you something useless and make you suffer. At this rate, it's not going to be a question of if, it's going to be a question of when. So please share, and also, of course, donate.bogosity.tv. Keep me doing what I do. One-time donations, PayPal, Venmo, cryptocurrency, or become a subscriber, Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. Get these videos early and ad-free. Thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, stay strong and be free.